Welcome to the Explainer. I want you to imagine something for a second. Think about an ancient text that survived for literally centuries, a text that somehow perfectly blends high-stakes magic, dramatic legends, and that raw, dirt-under-your-fingernails reality of pure human survival. Well, today, we're exploring an absolutely fascinating manuscript, a collection of wisdom known as Khonar Bachan. And let me tell you, this isn't just some old book. It's a cultural cornerstone. It's the very thing that guided millions of people through droughts, massive storms, and just the wild, unpredictable nature of life itself.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the contrast we're looking at here is just mind-blowing. On one hand, we've got the legendary author, Khonar. Her life story literally reads like a mythological epic, complete with demons and these crazy oceanic escapes. But then, on the other hand, the actual words she left behind, they are incredibly grounded. We are talking about highly practical, mathematically precise advice. Stuff like exactly when to plant crops, how to read the weather, and even how to calculate planetary movements. So how do these two extreme worlds exist in the same breath? Well, let's look at the source material to find out.
When we look at the aged, printed Bengali lines directly from our source text, a really interesting picture emerges. Historically speaking, Khonar's true identity is deeply shrouded in myth and mystery. Scholars are actually still debating who she really was or, if she was maybe a composite of several brilliant ancient minds. But these ancient pages show us that the culture accepted her as this singular, undeniable genius. Her words were so absolutely vital to people's survival that her legend kind of had to be just as magnificent just to carry the weight of her wisdom.
To really understand the text, you've got to understand the epic backstory it presents. According to the legend detailed in these pages, Khonar was born human, but she was spared and raised by Rakshasas. Those are often translated as demons or mythical beings, and they lived on the island of Lanka. So, she grows up incredibly intelligent and eventually marries a human astrologer named Mihir. But, as you might guess, living among the Rakshasas gets pretty dangerous. This leads to a super dramatic, tense escape across the ocean. This whole cinematic backstory sets Khonar up not just as a scholar, but as a real survivor who bridges the mythical and the mortal worlds.
The text actually gives us this fantastic anecdote to establish Khonar's superior intellect over her husband, Mihir. During their journey, they face a test, predicting the color of an unborn calf. So, Mihir uses all his classical astrological training, runs the numbers, and confidently predicts the calf will be black. Well, when it's born, it appears black. And Mihir is so completely humiliated at making a mistake that he actually throws his precious astrological books right into the sea in total shame. But then, Khonar steps in. She points out, no, the calf is actually white. It just temporarily looks dark because it's covered in birth fluids and blood. Boom! She proves that true wisdom isn't just about reading books. It's about the acute, sharp observation of reality. Though, as we're going to see, outshining the prominent male astrologers in her family would eventually lead to a pretty dark consequence.
Section 1. From Myth to Mud, Timeless Agricultural Wisdom.
Now, what's really interesting about this perfect blend of intellect and real-world observation is that it brings us right to the core of her teachings, the literal survival manual found in her agricultural advice. Think about the physical condition of the source material itself. The visual decay, the heavy worm-eating, the stained paper. This isn't just some pristine artifact sitting untouched behind glass. This visual damage emphasizes how fragile, yet how absolutely vital this knowledge was. These pages were referenced constantly. They were passed down through generations of farmers whose very lives depended on a good harvest. That wear and tear? It's a true testament to its practical utility.
Let's take a look at one of her most famous agricultural proverbs. She writes, "Plant bottle gourds in the courtyard, Lakshmi will grace your home." Now, Lakshmi is the Hindu goddess of wealth and prosperity. So on the surface, this sounds like a spiritual blessing, right? Like a magical spell for good fortune. But Khonar was an absolute master at encoding practical science into memorable religious poetry.
When we break down this proverb, we see the grounded, super practical economics behind it. Why plant bottle gourds in the courtyard? Well, because it maximizes that unused space right around the house. It provides a fast-growing, highly reliable food source for the family, basically ensuring no one goes hungry. And if you have a surplus, you sell it for extra income. Khonar's Lakshmi simply meant smart economics and food security. She totally understood that if you want farmers to adopt good practices, tying them to spiritual prosperity was literally the best communication strategy you could use.
Here's another absolutely fascinating proverb from the text that perfectly weaves her mythological background right into her farming advice. She warns,
do not plant bananas in the month of Bhadra, or they will die entirely, like the demon Ravana. Once again, she's using a culturally resonant myth, the total destruction of Ravana, to make absolutely sure the farmer never forgets this rule.
But let's look at the actual science behind that poetry. The month of Bhadra in the Bengali calendar corresponds to the late monsoon season, which is roughly August to September. It's a time of really heavy, stagnant water. If you plant a fresh banana sapling right then, the roots will just succumb to rot and fungal diseases. By avoiding this very specific window, the farmer ensures the crop actually survives. This just proves that right behind that epic poetry was precise, observational agricultural science. Section 2. The Ancient Meteorologist, Reading the Weather.
Beyond planting rules, a farmer's biggest threat is, well, the unpredictable sky. Long before we had satellites and Doppler radar, Khonar was the ultimate meteorologist. She started with immediate local observations. One of her proverbs states, "When the frogs croak densely and frequently, know that rain is coming swiftly." It's a beautifully simple observation of animal behavior, something anyone standing out in a field could notice without needing any specialized equipment whatsoever.
And this brilliantly illustrates how deeply she understood the natural world. Modern science tells us that amphibians, because of their permeable skin, are incredibly sensitive to sudden drops in barometric pressure and spikes in humidity. They physically feel the storm coming, and that triggers their mating calls. Khonar observed this biological reaction and codified it into a completely reliable weather alert. But, her profound accuracy with nature is exactly what cemented her tragic legend. According to the lore, her incredible meteorological and astrological predictions so thoroughly threatened her father-in-law and the prominent male astrologers of the royal court that he actually ordered her tongue to be cut off so she could no longer speak. It's horrific. But her timeless wisdom survived that brutal silencing, passed down by the very farmers who relied on her life-saving observations every single day.
And her brilliance didn't just stop at predicting a storm that was an hour away. No, she was capable of long-term, multi-month seasonal forecasting. Just listen to this proverb. Fog in the month of Posh means rain in the month of Baisakh. Posh is deep winter. Baisakh is the start of the summer storms. She's literally making a prediction across a span of 4 to 5 months. Let me walk you through the logical sequence here, because it's pretty wild. By observing the specific levels of winter condensation in fog and Posh, she was essentially calculating the moisture levels in the atmosphere. From there, she predicted how those macro weather patterns would shift as the Earth heated up leading into spring and summer. This allowed farmers to plan their entire crop cycles, their seed purchasing, and their irrigation strategies months in advance. It's just a remarkable example of ancient environmental tracking. Section 3. Decoding the Heavens, the Astrological Code.
So, we've seen her master the Earth and the weather. Now let's look at the final and perhaps the most complex part of the source material, her deep mathematical and astrological calculations. The later pages of the manuscript are absolutely filled with complex tables and rules. Khonar categorized planetary influences with incredibly strict mathematical precision. For instance, she outlined how Ravi, the sun, in the 10th house indicates great success. Chandra, the moon, in the 1st house brings comfort. Mangal, Mars, in the 8th house, that brings physical risk, like a weapon injury. She wasn't just throwing darts in the dark here. She was applying a rigorous, systematic framework to human life, trying to find some kind of order in the total chaos of existence.
Let's just slow down for a second and appreciate the sheer density of this ancient script. These aren't just stories anymore. These are straight-up complex algorithms. These pages contain intricate formulas for predicting major life events, calculating auspicious days, and even attempting to predict the outcome of a pregnancy based on numerical values that were assigned to names and dates. So the crucial point here is exactly how she structured these calculations. She would instruct the reader to count the letters in the mother's name, add the numerical value of the specific conception month, and then run those numbers through a series of multiplications and divisions using strict astrological constants. She was literally turning biological mysteries into a calculated step-by-step mathematical formula. While modern medicine relies on ultrasounds and blood work, Khonar was out there using the absolute highest form of data analysis available to her era to give people a sense of control and foresight. Which brings us to a final provocative thought to take away from this explainer. When we look at how Khonar observed barometric pressure through frogs, how she understood fungal root rot during the monsoon, and how she used complex algorithms to seek out patterns in human life, we really have to ask ourselves, is modern science simply catching up to the ancient poetic math of legends like Khonar? The line between folklore and science is incredibly thin in these pages.
It leaves us with a profound respect for ancient wisdom and, honestly, a deep curiosity to keep exploring the knowledge hidden in our past.